The screaming started before we even reached 30,000 feet. Everyone on that plane turned to stare. Heads twisted in their seats. Phone cameras came out. Some people laughed. Others shook their heads in disgust. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what really happened on Flight 447 from New York to Chicago. Because what you think you know about that day? You're wrong. And by the time I'm done telling you this story, you'll understand why a 9-year-old boy with holes in his shoes became the most talked about person in America. Hey friends, thank you so much for coming around. Watch until the end. If you leave now, you'll miss the best part. I promise the final twist will be worth your time. So let's continue. My name is Sarah, and I was the flight attendant working first class that Tuesday morning. I'd seen it all in my 15 years flying. Drunk passengers, crying babies, even a woman who tried to open the emergency door mid-flight. But nothing prepared me for what was about to unfold. The trouble started with seat 2A. Robert Hayes, that Robert Hayes, the tech billionaire you see on magazine covers, walked onto the plane with his 12-year-old son, Tommy. Now, Tommy wasn't like other kids. He had autism. Not the kind you see in movies where the kid is some genius who can count cards. Tommy struggled. Really struggled. From the moment they boarded, I could see trouble brewing. Tommy's eyes were wide with fear. His hands were already starting to shake. He kept looking at the plane door like it was a monster waiting to eat him. Robert was trying to keep it together, but I could see the stress lines on his face. His jaw was tight. His hands kept checking his phone. This was a man who controlled billion-dollar companies, but he couldn't control his own son's fear. The moment they sat down, Tommy started rocking back and forth. His hands flapped at his sides. He was making these little humming sounds that got louder and louder. "Daddy, no fly. No fly, Daddy," Tommy kept saying, his voice rising with each word. Robert tried everything. He pulled out an iPad loaded with Tommy's favorite videos. He offered snacks. He spoke in that calm, measured voice that probably worked in boardrooms, but meant nothing to a scared kid who couldn't understand why the walls were closing in around him. "Look, Tommy," Robert said, pointing at the screen. "It's your favorite show." But Tommy wasn't having it. His rocking got faster. His humming got louder. Other passengers were starting to notice. A woman in pearls and a fur coat, the kind who definitely had speak to the manager energy, kept turning around in her seat, shooting dirty looks at Robert and Tommy. A businessman in seat 1C was already looking annoyed, checking his expensive watch like Tommy's fear was personally offending his schedule. Then the flight attendants started closing the overhead bins, making announcements about seatbelts and takeoff procedures. The sounds echoed through the cabin like thunder. Tommy saw the plane door start to close. That's when the screaming started. Not crying, not whimpering. Full-on, ear-splitting screams that cut through the cabin like a knife through paper. Tommy threw himself against the seat. His legs kicked wildly. His arms swung at everything and nothing. "I want mommy! I want mommy! I want mommy!" He shrieked over and over, each scream more desperate than the last. The sound was heartbreaking. It was the sound of pure terror from a child who couldn't understand what was happening to him. But to the other passengers, it was just noise. Annoying, expensive ticket-ruining noise. The other first-class passengers lost their minds. The woman in pearls stood up and marched over, her heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. "Excuse me," she said to Robert, her voice dripping with fake politeness but real anger. "Can't you control your child? Some of us have important meetings to get to. We paid good money for a peaceful flight." Robert looked up at her, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'm sorry, he has autism. Flying is really hard for him." "Well, maybe you should have thought about that before bringing him into first class," she snapped back. "There are medications for these things, aren't there?" The businessman in seat 1C pulled out his phone and started recording. "This is unacceptable," he muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "They shouldn't allow disturbed children in first class. I'm posting this online. Everyone needs to see how this airline treats paying customers." That word, disturbed, hit Robert like a slap. I saw his face go pale, then red. His hands curled into fists. For a second, I thought he might actually hit the guy. But he didn't fight back. He just kept trying to calm Tommy, whose screams were getting worse by the minute. The poor kid was having a complete meltdown, and his dad was falling apart right along with him. More passengers started joining in. It was like watching a pack of wolves circle wounded prey. "This is ridiculous," the fur coat woman announced to the whole cabin. "My tax bracket shouldn't have to deal with this nonsense. I pay extra to avoid exactly this kind of situation." "Send them to the back of the plane where they belong," someone else called out from across the aisle. "Or better yet, get them off entirely," another voice added. "The kid clearly can't handle flying." Each comment hit Robert like a physical blow. I could see him shrinking into himself, his confidence crumbling. Here was a man who regularly gave speeches to thousands of people, who made decisions that affected millions, and he was being destroyed by a group of entitled passengers who couldn't show basic human decency to a scared child. The plane hadn't even taken off yet, and I could tell the captain was getting pressure. Rich people don't like their comfort disturbed. They pay premium prices for premium peace, and they expect to get what they pay for. I radioed the cockpit, trying to keep my voice steady. "We might have a situation in first class." The captain's voice crackled back through my earpiece. "Handle it, Sarah. We're already 20 minutes delayed because of weather. If that kid doesn't calm down in 5 minutes, they're off the plane. I've got a plane full of passengers and a schedule to keep." 5 minutes. That's all Robert had to save his son from public humiliation and getting kicked off the flight. I watched him try everything he could think of. He got down on the floor next to Tommy's seat, not caring how it looked to the other passengers. He whispered in his ear words of comfort that got lost in the screaming. He tried to hold Tommy, but the boy just fought harder, his arms swinging wildly. "Please, Tommy," Robert begged, his voice cracking. "Daddy needs you to be brave. Can you be brave for Daddy?" But Tommy was beyond hearing him. The fear had taken over completely. His whole world had shrunk down to pure terror, and nothing his father said could reach him through it. Other passengers were getting nastier by the minute, really nasty. "I'm never flying this airline again," someone announced loudly. "How do they expect us to concentrate on work with this circus going on?" "That child is clearly dangerous," the businessman with the phone said. "Look how violent he's getting. He could hurt someone." "Where's security?" the Pearl Lady demanded. "Why isn't someone doing something about this?" I could see Robert's world falling apart. His son was in crisis, and instead of help, he was getting judgment and cruelty from people who had everything but compassion. That's when I noticed the boy in seat 12B. He'd been there the whole time, but somehow I hadn't really seen him until that moment. Maybe because he was so quiet while everyone else was making so much noise. Maybe because he was just a kid in economy class, easy to overlook when all the drama was happening in first class. His name was Marcus, and he was flying alone. 9 years old, with these incredibly kind eyes and this calm way about him that seemed way too old for his age. He'd been watching everything quietly, not with the cruel curiosity of the adults, but with something that looked like understanding. Marcus was a small kid, probably smaller than most 9-year-olds. His clothes were clean but clearly worn, the kind of clean that comes from careful washing and rewashing because there aren't many clothes to choose from. His sneakers had holes in them, patched with duct tape. He carried everything he owned in a backpack that was also held together with duct tape. But there was something about him, something steady and calm that stood out in all the chaos. While Tommy screamed and Robert panicked and the first-class passengers complained, Marcus just sat there watching with those thoughtful eyes. And then, without asking permission from anyone, he unbuckled his seatbelt and walked up the aisle toward first class. Now understand, this was a poor kid flying alone in economy. Walking into first class when you're not supposed to be there? When you're clearly not the kind of kid who belongs there? That takes serious guts. "Hey," the businessman with the phone called out. "You can't be up here, kid. This is first class." But Marcus ignored him completely. He walked right up to Robert, who was still on the floor trying to calm Tommy down. "Excuse me, mister," Marcus said softly to Robert. "Can I try something?" Robert looked up, surprised. Here was this little black boy with holes in his shoes, offering to help when every wealthy adult around them had only made things worse. He looked so small standing there in the aisle, but there was something confident about him, something that said he knew exactly what he was doing. "I don't know," Robert said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "He's really upset. He doesn't like strangers touching him." "I won't touch him unless he wants me to," Marcus said. "My little brother gets like this sometimes. Can I sit next to him for a minute?" The fur coat woman gasped, like Marcus had suggested something scandalous. "Absolutely not. We don't need another child causing problems. Security should escort this boy back to his seat immediately." "He doesn't belong up here," the businessman agreed. "This is already enough of a circus without adding more kids to the mix." But Robert was desperate. The 5 minutes were almost up. I could see the captain getting ready to make the call to have them removed from the plane. Tommy was still screaming, still kicking, still lost in his world of fear. "Okay," Robert said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, try." Marcus nodded seriously, like Robert had just given him an important job. He slid into the empty seat next to Tommy, seat 2B, which Robert had bought to give Tommy extra space but hadn't expected to need for a stranger. Marcus didn't try to touch Tommy or talk to him right away. He just sat there, watching. And then he did something incredible. He started matching Tommy's rocking motion, back and forth, same rhythm, same speed. Tommy's screaming started to quiet to whimpers. Not because Marcus had done anything dramatic, but because suddenly Tommy wasn't alone in his fear. Someone else was moving with him, understanding him without words. Then Marcus did something even more incredible. He started humming. Not loud, just a soft, gentle tune that seemed to wrap around Tommy like a warm blanket. It wasn't a song I recognized, just a melody that felt like comfort and safety and home. "It's okay," Marcus whispered, still rocking with Tommy. "Flying is scary. I was scared my first time too. Want to know a secret? I'm still scared sometimes." Tommy's rocking started to slow down. His breathing became less frantic. For the first time since boarding, he wasn't fighting against everything around him. "You know what I do when I'm scared?" Marcus asked, his voice so gentle it was almost musical. "I count things. It helps my brain focus on something besides being afraid. Want to count with me?" Marcus pointed to the window next to Tommy's seat. "Look out there. See those white fluffy things? Those are clouds. 1 cloud, 2 clouds, 3 clouds." Tommy stopped crying completely. His breathing slowed to normal. He looked where Marcus was pointing, his eyes following the boy's finger to the window. 4 clouds, Tommy said quietly, his voice hoarse from screaming but clear and calm. The entire first-class cabin went silent. Not angry silent, amazed silent. These passengers who had been ready to throw Tommy and Robert off the plane just minutes before were now watching in complete shock as a 9-year-old boy worked magic they couldn't understand. 5 clouds, Marcus said, smiling. "You're really good at counting. What else can we count?" For the next 20 minutes, as the plane taxied and took off and climbed into the sky, Marcus sat with Tommy like they were old friends. They counted clouds, then cars on the ground below, then the blue parts of the sky between the white parts. When the plane hit a patch of turbulence that made Tommy tense up again, Marcus told him it was just the plane dancing with the clouds, trying to make them laugh. Tommy giggled. Actually giggled. The businessman who had been recording put his phone away, looking embarrassed. The fur coat woman sat back down and stopped complaining. Other passengers went back to their books and laptops, but I could see them stealing glances at the 2 boys, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. But I noticed something else. Something that made my heart ache in the best way possible. Robert was crying. Not loud, not obvious, just tears running down his face as he watched this poor kid show more kindness to his son than anyone ever had. His whole body was shaking with relief and something deeper. Something like awe. In 15 years of flying, I had never seen anything like it. This little boy had walked into a situation that was tearing a family apart and somehow made it whole again. Not with money or authority or professional training, but with simple kindness and understanding. When we reached cruising altitude and I had to start drink service, I reluctantly approached Marcus. "Honey, I need you to go back to your seat now. It's airline rules." Marcus nodded like he understood completely. He turned to Tommy, who was now calm and looking out the window with interest instead of fear. "I have to go back to my seat now, buddy," Marcus said. "But I'll come check on you later if that's okay." Tommy looked at Marcus with clear, focused eyes. "Will you count more things with me?" "Absolutely," Marcus promised. "Maybe next time we can count how many states we fly over." Tommy smiled. Actually smiled. And hugged Marcus goodbye like they were old friends who had known each other for years instead of strangers who had met an hour ago. "See you when we land, buddy," Marcus said. As Marcus walked back toward economy class, something extraordinary happened. That businessman who had been so cruel earlier, he stopped Marcus in the aisle. "Hey, kid," the man said, his voice completely different from before. Softer. That was really something special you did up there." Marcus just shrugged like it was no big deal. He was scared. Nobody should have to be scared alone. The businessman reached into his wallet and pulled out a $20 bill. "Here, buy yourself something nice when you land." Marcus looked at the money for a long moment, then gently pushed it back toward the man. "Thank you, but I didn't help him for money. I helped him because it was the right thing to do." That's when Robert did something that shocked everyone on that plane. He unbuckled his seatbelt and followed Marcus back to economy class. I watched him walk down that aisle, past all the passengers who had been so quick to judge his son, past the invisible line that separates first class from everyone else, all the way to seat 12B where Marcus was buckling himself back in. "What's your name, son?" Robert asked, crouching down next to Marcus's seat. "Marcus Johnson, sir." "Marcus, what you did up there. In 12 years, no one has ever been able to calm Tommy down like that. Doctors, therapists, specialists. Nobody. How did you know what to do?" Marcus shrugged again, that same humble gesture. "My baby brother has something wrong with his brain too. Different from your son, but similar. Mama says some kids just need extra love and extra patience. Their brains work different, but that doesn't make them broken." Robert was quiet for a long moment, processing this wisdom from a 9-year-old. "Marcus, where are you flying to today?" Marcus's expression changed. The confidence and calm faded a little, replaced by something sadder. "Chicago. Going to live with my grandma." "That sounds nice. A visit with grandma?" "No, sir," Marcus said quietly. "Going to live there. For good. Mama can't take care of me and my brother anymore. She's real sick." That's when Robert learned Marcus's whole story. And let me tell you, it was a story that would break your heart and put it back together again. Marcus's mom, Janet, had stage 4 cancer, the kind where doctors stop talking about cures and start talking about time. She was dying, slowly and painfully, and she couldn't afford the treatment that might help her and take care of 2 kids at the same time. The family had been living in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn. Janet worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and stocking shelves at a grocery store during the day, but it still wasn't enough. When she got too sick to work, they lost everything. Marcus was flying alone to Chicago because his mom couldn't afford to come with him. This 9-year-old was being brave about losing everything: his mom, his brother, his home, his entire life, while rich adults couldn't handle a scared autistic child. His baby brother, David, was being placed in foster care. Different family, different city. The social workers said it would be easier if the boys were split up, since David needed special care that Marcus's elderly grandmother couldn't provide. So Marcus was losing his mom to cancer and his brother to the system, and he was handling it with more grace and strength than most adults could manage. He was flying alone to start over with nothing but a duct-taped backpack and a heart full of love for other people. The contrast hit Robert like a truck to the chest. Here was his son, who would inherit billions of dollars, getting upset about flying in luxury. And here was Marcus, who was losing his family and everything he had ever known, comforting a stranger, because it was the right thing to do. Here was Robert, surrounded by wealth and privilege, falling apart because people were judging his child. And here was Marcus, facing real tragedy with dignity and kindness. Robert went back to his seat, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. He kept looking back toward economy class, then at Tommy, who was still calmly looking out the window and occasionally asking questions about what he saw below. For the rest of the flight, Robert was quiet. Not his usual phone checking, email reading, deal-making quiet. A different kind of quiet. The kind that comes when someone is having their whole world shifted off its axis. When we started our descent into Chicago, Marcus came back up to first class to check on Tommy like he had promised. "How are those clouds looking, buddy?" Marcus asked. "I counted 47, Tommy said proudly, "and I saw a lake that looked like a star." "That's awesome," Marcus said. "You're going to be a great cloud counter." They talked until we touched down, and I watched Robert watching them. Seeing his son laugh and chat like a normal kid, seeing Marcus treat Tommy like he was just another friend instead of someone to be pitied or feared. When we landed in Chicago and the passengers started gathering their things, Robert made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. He asked Marcus to wait by the gate after everyone else had gotten off. Marcus looked confused but agreed. Robert had that look in his eyes, the same look he probably got when he was about to make a billion-dollar business deal, except this time it wasn't about money. Robert made some phone calls. A lot of phone calls. Quick, urgent conversations in that tone that meant he was calling in every favor he had and probably creating some new ones. 30 minutes later, something incredible happened. A woman came rushing through the airport terminal, crying and running like her life depended on reaching gate B7 as fast as possible. Behind her was a nurse carrying a small boy, maybe 3 years old, who was looking around with wide, curious eyes. Marcus saw them first. His face went completely white, like he was seeing ghosts. "Mama," he whispered, like he couldn't believe his eyes. "I'm here, baby! I'm here!" Janet Johnson cried, dropping to her knees and wrapping Marcus in a hug that looked like it could heal broken hearts. Marcus's baby brother, David, reached out from the nurse's arms, making happy babbling sounds as he recognized his big brother. It turned out Robert hadn't just made phone calls. He had arranged for Janet to be flown to Chicago on his private jet, along with David and a medical team. But that wasn't all. While Marcus and his family were reuniting, Robert was still making calls. Calls to the best cancer doctors in the country, calls to private hospitals, calls to lawyers and accountants and people who could make impossible things happen when money was no object. "Why?" Janet asked Robert through her tears, still holding Marcus like she would never let him go again. "Why would you do all this for us? We're strangers." Robert looked at Tommy, who was holding Marcus's hand like they were best friends who had known each other forever. "Your son saved my son today," Robert said simply. "He showed Tommy kindness when no one else would. He showed me what real strength looks like, what real wealth looks like." Robert knelt down so he was at Marcus's eye level. "Marcus, I want to help your family. If it's okay with your mom, I'd like to make sure she gets the best medical care possible. And I'd like to make sure you and David never have to be separated again. But there's something I haven't told you yet. Something that makes this story even more incredible." After all the passengers had left and I was cleaning up the cabin, I overheard Robert talking to someone on the phone. He was doing research on Marcus, trying to figure out how to help him best. That's when I learned something that made my jaw drop. Marcus wasn't just any kid flying alone. Marcus Johnson was the same boy who had been in the news 6 months earlier. Remember that story about the 9-year-old who saved his baby brother from a house fire? The kid who carried a 3-year-old down 2 flights of stairs while their building burned around them? The one who went back into the smoke to get his mom's medicine because he knew she needed it to live? Marcus Johnson. The same kid. This boy had already been through more hardship than most adults ever face. He'd already proven he was a hero. His mom had been in the hospital getting chemotherapy when the fire started, and Marcus had been babysitting David. When the smoke alarms went off, Marcus didn't panic. He didn't run. He got his baby brother to safety, then went back for the things that mattered most. The news had called him a hero then, but the story died down after a few weeks like these stories always do. People moved on to the next thing. But the Johnson family was still struggling, still fighting, still losing the battle against poverty and illness. And on that plane, Marcus proved he was a hero again. Not by running into burning buildings this time, but by running toward a scared child when everyone else was running away from him. The story went viral, of course. Someone had recorded Robert's speech at the gate, and it spread across social media like wildfire. Flight angels started trending. News crews showed up at the hospital where Janet was getting treatment. Talk show hosts called, but the real story, the one that matters, happened over the next few months. Robert didn't just write a check and disappear like rich people sometimes do when they want to feel good about themselves. He became part of the Johnson family's life. He made sure Janet got the experimental treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. He hired the best doctors, the best nurses, the best everything. More importantly, he made sure Marcus and David stayed together. He bought them a house near the hospital so Marcus could visit his mom every day. He hired a nanny who specialized in special needs children to help take care of David. And Tommy? Tommy got the friend he had always needed but never thought he could have. I got a letter from Robert Hayes 3 months later. Inside was a photo that made me cry right there in the airport break room. It showed Tommy and Marcus at Tommy's birthday party. They were laughing, covered in chocolate cake, looking like the best friends they had become. Tommy was wearing a t-shirt that said Cloud Counter, and Marcus was wearing one that said Flight Angel. In the letter, Robert wrote, "Sarah, I wanted you to know how Tommy is doing. He speaks now, really speaks. Not just words, full sentences about his feelings, his dreams, his friendship with Marcus. The doctors say it's the most progress they've ever seen in a child with his condition. Marcus taught my son that different doesn't mean broken, and Marcus taught me that wealth means nothing if you don't use it to lift others up. I spent years trying to fix Tommy, when what he really needed was someone to accept him exactly as he is. Thank you for letting that little boy save us both." At the bottom of the letter, in a child's careful handwriting, Tommy had added, "Marcus is my best friend. He taught me to count clouds, and he taught me that being scared is okay, but being mean is not." And in different handwriting, Marcus had written, "Tommy taught me that being different is a superpower. We're different together and that makes us strong." But the story gets even better. Janet Johnson's experimental treatment worked. The tumors started shrinking. She went into remission. It wasn't a miracle cure. She still has to fight every day. But she's alive, and she's with her boys. Marcus started going to a private school that Robert paid for, but he never forgot where he came from. He started a program at his school called Cloud Counters, where kids with autism and kids without autism could be friends and help each other. Tommy joined the program, of course. He became one of the first autism ambassadors, kids who help other kids understand what it's like to have autism and how to be a good friend to someone who thinks differently. The program spread to other schools, then other cities. Now there are Cloud Counter programs in 12 states, all started because one little boy decided to be kind to a stranger on an airplane. I kept that letter in my uniform pocket for years. Every time I dealt with difficult passengers, every time someone was rude or demanding or cruel, I'd remember Marcus Johnson. I'd remember that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. Sometimes a poor boy with holes in his shoes can teach a billionaire what real wealth looks like. Sometimes a 9-year-old can remind grown adults what it means to be human. And sometimes, when the world feels cruel and divided, when people judge each other based on money and class and color, a child steps forward and shows us that love and understanding cost nothing but mean everything. Marcus didn't just calm down an autistic boy on a plane that day. He reminded all of us what it means to choose kindness over cruelty, understanding over judgment, love over fear. The last I heard, Marcus is in high school now, still on full scholarship. He's planning to study special education in college so he can help kids like Tommy and David. He wants to be a teacher, maybe start his own school someday. Tommy is in regular classes now, thriving, with Marcus still as his best friend and pen pal. They video call every week to count things together: clouds, stars, anything that catches their attention. Robert Hayes never forgot that lesson. His company now donates millions to autism research and programs for underprivileged kids. But more than that, he changed how he sees the world. He started hiring people based on character instead of credentials. He started measuring success by how many people he could lift up instead of how much money he could make. And me? I retired from flying last year, but I never stopped looking for the Marcus Johnsons of the world. The quiet heroes who choose kindness when everyone else chooses judgment. Because that day taught me something important. You never know who your angel might be. Sometimes they come in expensive suits with all the answers. Sometimes they come with holes in their shoes and hearts full of love. But they always come with the courage to do what's right when it matters most. Flight 447 landed safely that day. But for 3 people on board, it was really the beginning of a journey that would last the rest of their lives. A journey that started with screaming and ended with love. A journey that proved that sometimes the poorest person on the plane is actually the richest person in the world. Sometimes the smallest person in the room has the biggest heart. And sometimes, when everything seems hopeless and cruel, a child steps forward and reminds us all what it means to be human. That's the real story of what happened on Flight 447. Not just a viral video or a trending hashtag, but a reminder that kindness is the most powerful force in the world. And it all started with one little boy who decided that nobody should have to be scared alone. I would love to know what you would have done in this situation. Drop your thoughts below. I'll be reading every single comment. Dear friends, what you just saw is only one part of the bigger picture. In the next video, I'll reveal the twist no one saw coming, so make sure you're here when it drops. Thank you so much for watching. I love you so much, and don't forget to give this video a like, hit the subscribe button, and share with someone who needs to hear it.